Welcome to Spiritual Direction and Soul Care every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. So glad that you are with us on the broadcast or on the replay. We are a growing community online of people who are looking for insanely practical tools for the spiritual journey, looking at the intersection of mental health and our spirituality. We're a diverse community of people who use lots of different kinds of vocabulary, come from different religious backgrounds or no religious background at all. But we are here and we are seeking transformation and healing, getting an imagination for transformation, spiritual direction, soul care, and support. That's what this is all about. And we're a community full of wise people. I can't wait to hear from you today. We always have great comments and good conversations on our Sunday live gathering. And it's going to be awesome as we continue with our current journey series called Great Days. This is part 2. And we're just looking at the different themes of this season of possibility, creativity, imagination, hope. It's going to be cool. So let's prepare as we dive in today with our basic spiritual practices of breath and stillness. We ground ourselves with breath and stillness. And so I invite you to just simply breathe and out and give yourself the gift of stillness. As I say each week, we let last week go. We don't take up the coming week. This is a moment of rest. We breathe in and out. We let our shoulders drop. We are present. Thich Nhat Hanh says that one of the most basic ways that we can come to a place of love and compassion is when we focus our attention on our breath, because it helps bring our minds back to our bodies and our minds. And when our minds and our bodies are aligned, we can better understand, see ourselves, be at peace. We access the consolation that is in each of us, the peace that passes all understanding, as the Christian scriptures describe. These are resources and realities that are available in you and me always. We can always give ourselves the gift of stillness. So here we are on part 2 of Great Days as we look at possibility, creativity, imagination, and hope. We're talking about the great days of the Easter season. In the Christian tradition, Easter is not just one Sunday, it's 50 days of feasting and celebrating, of discovering new ways of being and belonging. And we're exploring the resurrection stories. We're exploring the resurrection stories from the Christian scriptures. We're discovering that this season, and really is really a reminder that all of life really is an invitation always to a whole new way of seeing and living, because it's in this season a declaration and a hope and a belief that something new is always possible, that after all the different kinds of death that we may see or experience in life, there is always more life after death. And so the story of Easter really inspires a kind of hoping and faith in us, a faith that inspires kind of an expansive and generative way of looking at the world. And I think a lot of times one of the best ways we can express how we look at the world is in our questions and paying attention to our questions. And so expansive and generative questions are questions like, how can I live with a way of seeing, of faith and hope, even when things are uncertain? How can I do that? That's a generative question, because you're asking, how do I want to live? How can I live? What are different ways for me to organize and structure my life? That's a generative question that can create new ways of being and belonging. You can ask questions like, how can I be confident in the possibility of new beginnings again and again and again? Because if you're around the planet long enough, if you're alive long enough, you're going to be around for when life cycles around in a way that isn't fun, right? And yet we have to hold on to the reality that new beginnings are possible even after hard times or when disruption or unwanted change comes. We hold on to that possibility within ourselves, with our resources and abilities and values and a deep knowledge of your infinite worth. But also, we are confident in the possibility of new beginnings because of the people around us who remind us and hold forth that new beginnings are always possible again and again and again. After mourning comes laughter, right? After weeping comes laughter. After hard times will come wide and open spaces. This is the rhythm of life. And that's really what Easter is really about, is recognizing the reality of the cycles of our lives. And new beginnings are always possible. We can, in Easter, when we start thinking of that, we start to get back in touch with the question, what do I have to offer to myself and to others, even when things are hard, even in times of crisis, right? That's a question that calls us back to ourselves, that focuses us on our abilities. That is the next logical step out of simply focusing on your breath and returning your knowledge to your breath and getting your mind and your body on the same page. When we're from there, we can jump off to saying, okay, so what are my strengths? What do I have to offer right now? It doesn't have to be amazing. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It might just have to be being there with someone. It may just have to be the words, I love you. It may just have to be knowing that maybe you should put the phone down and just pay attention, right? It doesn't have to be world rocking, cure cancer, like the miraculous trifecta of curing cancer and solving world peace and discovering alien life, right? Like it doesn't have to be at that level. We always hold ourselves at a higher level than what is really beyond oftentimes our capacities. And we miss the deep and powerful gifts that we already have in some of the most simplest action that we can do with each other, you know? So in Easter, we wonder if in these great days we wonder if we can learn that Easter really is life, that renewal and restoration and redemption and resurrection is part of life. And it's the celebration um, of the birth of kind of a whole new worldview of possibility that looks for what is possible, that emphasizes imagination and stubborn hope, and it emphasizes unbounded creativity, right? It's an Easter mindset, but it's for every day. In the abstract, we can really fall in love with these ideas, right? We can fall in love with the idea of, I want to be positive and think about what's possible. I love these ideas. It sounds so good, right? But we also have to remember that everything we are doing, even in the renewal process, is a process. It's a process. Everything is a process. Possibility, imagination, hope, creativity, these things are a process. These things don't arrive fully formed in us. Once we get a vision for renewal, once we get a vision for restoration, once we get a vision for reconstructing our life, our relationships, our careers, our health, our sense of deep connection to what is true, our growth in God devotion, we're only getting the first step, which is the vision, right? We get to do this process, this work of living into that vision, of letting that vision shine light onto where we actually are at right now, right? So let's look at today's Jesus story in John 21. It's part of the aftermath of the resurrection stories. And it's really interesting because this is like the third, maybe the fourth time Jesus has appeared to and met up with his disciples after his resurrection. The first time was with uh, Mary Magdalene, and then he shows up a couple other times with the disciples. He meets up with Thomas. We talked about that last week. And now he's going to meet up with them again. And it kind of goes like this. Afterward, Jesus again, so after these three other times that he's met up with people who know him, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. And it happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were all together. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, We'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, Friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered. He said, Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And when they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, It's Jesus. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him say it, he wrapped his outer garment around him and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. And when they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, Bring some of the fish you just caught. So Simon climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153 of them. But even with so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said, Come and have breakfast. None of the disciples asked him, Who are you? They knew it was him. And Jesus came, took the bread, and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. And then after this, he has this really amazing conversation with Peter that clarifies the new way of being and belonging that Peter and all the disciples would have, because they are seeing something new breaking in the resurrection of Jesus. It's really fascinating. So they've seen Jesus a few times, and then Peter's like, and they're sitting around, they're trying to figure out what this all means. And then Peter says, I'm going to go fishing, and people go with him, right? That process that I'm talking about, this process in the great days, this process of aligning where we are now with with the new possibility that we see, right? That's this process. And it's interesting that they're in this process in this story as well, but they go back to what they know. They go back to what is familiar. They go back to fishing where Jesus first met them. And I've heard a lot of people talk about this. This isn't original to me, that people know that they go back to what they know. Most of the time, though, if you grew up in church, I would always hear this described as something that's negative, right? You know, when things are hard and you want to have control, you go back to what you know. You know, you give up and you go back to what you know. I say, I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think this is wrong. I think this is very normal. I think when you go back to what is deeply familiar, it helps you clarify what's core to who you are. It helps you see if what is really about your truest, deepest self that's finding this new expression. It's helping you to see if this old form or if this thing that was familiar, this familiar expression, is really what you want to be about or not. I think it's important to go back to what you know and to see it for what it is, because maybe you will leave it behind, or maybe you'll reimagine it and find a new way to express it. But it's actually important. When you see what's possible and new, Jesus is alive, a whole new reality has broken out for them. And they've seen it a few times, 3 times, 4 times if you're Mary, right? Like, it's important to say, well, what does this actually mean for everything I've known before and everything that's come before and how I want to be going forward? We have to kind of go back to what we know to integrate the new vision, right? To take what is good, to leave behind what really isn't helpful or hurtful even, right? You have to decide what you want to take with you into the new future. And sometimes too, you know, as you're dipping your toe out into the new, it's okay to just kind of put one foot out for a little while, just to get a sense, right? It's like, I hate jumping into, like, when we go down to Florida, my mom has a pool in her little community, and sometimes the pool's cold, right? And my kids just jump right in, and Jill just jumps right in, right? And they just get it over with. But for me, every time, the shock of that is too much. So I like to inch my way in slowly, you know, kind of splash water up in the sensitive under parts and all that. So I just kind of get used to it and then I slip in, right? It's the same idea, right? Sometimes when you're starting to step out on something new, don't you got to know and you know what's best for you if you need to jump in with both feet or if you need to kind of test it out a little bit, right? So sometimes the familiar is this little handhold that you can hold on to just kind of stabilize your sense of self before you're really waiting and really confident to step out and to get a sense of where you've been so that you really know how you want to navigate as you go forward. See? See, I think a lot of times, religion teaches us to be judgmental of people and their process, but to love a person is to love a process. And so that means to even love yourself is to love your own processes. And so, like, I don't think it's wrong or suspicious that Peter's going back to what he knows and takes six other friends with him. I think they've got to go figure it out, right? Sometimes you need to go do one more round before you leave it behind. And that's what ends up happening here, right? They have breakfast with Jesus on the beach, and then Jesus talks to Peter and it's like, "Hey, do you love me? Yeah, well then go do this. Don't fish anymore. Go do these things. Go love people. Go transform people with this message that I'm here and I'm alive and something new is always possible and love and compassion are the way into newness. Forgiveness is the way into newness. Leaving the past behind is the way into newness, right? So they needed this process. I think it's really human. So I think it's important when we read these stories that we don't just read them through the lenses of received, accepted interpretation and dogma, because that's how pastors have preached about it for years and years and years. Some of you who come from backgrounds where you don't have religious background, you can hear these stories with fresher ears oftentimes, right? It's something that I've had to learn and unlearn, right? Like, how do we see the human element? What's more consistent with our humanity in these stories? Because I think Jesus is the human one, right? The Son of Man, it means the human one. Jesus is illuminating the deepest, truest components of what it really means to be a functioning, flourishing human being, right? So we need to read these stories through the lens of humanity, through the lens of what humanizes us and makes us better understanding of ourselves and other people's processes. And some of the best ways that we can learn that is by just listening to the stories of what happened with other people and how they grew and how they changed, right? There's a human development theory called relational cultural theory that is different from a lot of other theories of human development because it says humans really grow. The main way people grow and develop is really actually by being in relationship with others and taking action in those relationships. And then that action inspires change, transformation, conflict sometimes. But that's the way we continue to grow and develop. It's never ending. You never arrive. Other models of human development that a lot of times the church buys into is that you have to like just become mature or become fully self-sufficient or become self-aware, all these things. But it's like relational cultural theory helps us see that we're constantly growing in awareness. There's an infinite depth of self-awareness and growth and becoming that we're actually in for our whole journey, right? And so it's like really helpful to read these stories through the filter of what is ultimately what I think makes a lot more sense about what human beings really are, right? And we get in touch with that which is deep and eternal, what is sacred, what is divine, then by seeing what is really true and real about us as people who are a process. You're a process, I'm a process. And to love each other is to love a process, you know? We have a great comment here from Mark. He says, going back to what you know, this is why deconstruction of my faith and rebuilding it from scratch has been so important to me, to helping me realize what I am and what I am not, to realize what I am and to realize what I am not. I am going to throw this up on here because I think this is an awesome comment here. Let me see here. I'm throwing it up here so you guys can see it. This is such an excellent comment. And yes, a lot of people call this the deconstruction process. A lot of people in other spaces call it human growth, reflection, right? A lot of people in church world are right now are really worried about the crisis of deconstruction. But I think deconstruction is just human beings as they grow and have more experiences, reflecting on if certain kinds of language works for them. if certain things that they've been told are true really are true, and if it's worked for them, right? If they've actually seen it function for them. This is an excellent comment. We're going to throw it up there as I keep commenting here a little bit more. So they go back to what they know. They go back to what's familiar. And that's part of your process. That's part of clarifying what you're going to leave behind, what you're going to take with you. You might leave it all behind. That's okay, right? As you find that, but it also clarifies for you what works for you, what doesn't work for you, right? What you really value. The second thing I wanted to just mention too is I think it's interesting that even though they've seen Jesus at least 3 times before, they don't recognize him at first when they see him out on the shoreline. They're actually close to the shoreline. They don't recognize his voice. They don't recognize him. They've seen him 3 times before, but this is still new, right? Part of Easter, right? Part of resurrection, part of renewal, part of transformation and reconstructing our lives is relearning who we are and who the people are around us, and relearning who we are in light of a new reality that we want or that we're experiencing. So an Easter mindset means remaining open to how others are transforming and changing, right? As someone steps into a new way of being and belonging, that might not seem familiar to what you've become accustomed to, or what the mindset, the image that you have of them in your mind. And even as you get around them, as they step into that, they're still new, they're changing and different. And you have to let that unfold. You have to let that come about. You have to start having curiosity and interest in it. You have to letting that shine light on how you are growing and how you're becoming. When someone else changes, maybe sometimes that's an invitation not for you to be worried about how they're changing or how they're growing, but to say, how is this inviting me to change? How is this inviting me to think about how things used to be and if I really hold to this or what I want to be? They're discovering new ways of being and belonging. Maybe that's an invitation for me to discover new ways of being and belonging in the world. So it's like, it's okay, right? Because part of the process means the person that you thought you knew might be a little unfamiliar at first, but get curious and stay open and journey with them, right? Change together. It's letting this unfamiliar person that you thought you knew be a gift, right? So they start listening, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's this stranger to them who they think is a stranger sitting on the beach saying, hey, have you caught anything? Nothing. Hey, well, throw your nets on the other side of the boat, right? Do the thing you were doing, but do it differently. Change it up. Discover something new. And they listen to him. Like, they don't know if this person, if they don't recognize him, they don't know this person from, Joe, it's like some random dude. We don't even know if he's a fisherman, but he's telling us to do this. All right, we'll throw it over. And what do they have? But they listen to what he has to offer, and they get abundance, right? Tons of fish. And that breakthrough makes it click for them. That breakthrough, that new way, that new gift of breakthrough makes them see, once again, the deepest, truest part of who this person is that they really actually know. That they've uncovered the deepest, truest part of that person, the gifts they have to offer, the blessings that they have to offer, the goodness that they've brought. They see it again and anew in a new way, right? And that they're like, oh, that's you. That's you, the one who's always brought me this goodness, the one who's always loved me this way, the one who's always been there this way, right? That's you. It makes it click for them. The blessing opens their eyes to a whole new expression of Jesus and a whole new appreciation of Jesus and a whole new appreciation now of what's possible. Of simply just, can you imagine like fishing all night, always on the one side of the boat, and just say, just throw it over on the other side. They're not even in deep water. And there was a treasure waiting for them right there. It doesn't have to be that deep. They're only about 100 yards out, the text says, right? It helps them step fully into a new purpose. It gets them, it wraps up the fishing with abundance of blessing. They bring it in. It leads them to breakfast and conversation that completely clarifies and crystallizes the new for them and new purpose, right? Even the old way of living as a fisherman then, right? They went back to what they knew, becomes a door to a new way of being, a new mission, a new purpose, a new way of being and belonging. See, nothing is wasted. Even you see how important it is to go back to the new, to the what you knew, to the old, so that you can reframe it to see what is possible. Nothing's wasted. So how about you? How about you? When things are changing, what's the familiar thing that you hold on to for a sense of stability and comfort? Right? What's the familiar thing that you go back to? Put it in the chat here. Right? When things are changing, what's the familiar things that you hold on to for a sense of stability and comfort? What do you do right now that gives you your sense of self, right? That helps you hold on, that helps you get through, that helps you know who you are. What are those things? They can be gateways to something new. Maybe you're good where you're at, right? Maybe you're good where you're at. Jill says worship music. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe the activities that you're involved in, you're good where you're at. And then that's clarifying too. Maybe it's not a season for change in those areas. But what if those areas are doorways? What is worship showing you? You know, not the same old messages, because worship is heard now through the filter of other experiences, right? So what is worship opening up that's new for you, right? That's what Jill's saying, right? But what about anybody else? What are the things you hold on to for a sense of stability and comfort? Just think about it, right? This is a good question. This is one of these generative Easter questions. Here's another question. What part of your life right now seems strange or new, but might really contain a deeper, truer expression of yourself, right? Mark says, I ignore it for so long that I feel forced to confront it. Ultimately, I go to my pets and wife for comfort. Yeah. Yeah. These handholds in life, right? But let's all push a little more. What parts of your life right now seem strange and new, but might really contain a message about what's deeper and truer about yourself, a deeper, truer expression of yourself, right? Like this morning, I ran out to the grocery store because we had run out of some sourdough bread, and we make these really amazing breakfast sandwiches. And I'll make sure I post one of the pictures in the Facebook page. These really amazing breakfast sandwiches on a piece of sourdough bread with all this yummy goodness and a fried egg and all these things, right? You know? And I'm sitting there walking through the grocery store in the early hours of the morning, and it's calm, and I'm buying beautiful produce, and I'm getting the stuff to make something that we love and have discovered that we just love making. And it's something, so that Jill can have her breakfast while she was on a meeting. And I was like, oh my gosh, what a great way to spend Sunday morning, in a great grocery store with the fruits of the earth, putting together good food that's healthy and yummy and delicious for the person I love, right? Like, I used to not be able to do that, right? And it wakens me to understanding that, reminding myself again that in this new season of life, what's really deeply true about me is that I love my family. I love Jill. I love making her open-faced breakfast sandwiches with a perfect fried egg. I love making food for the people I love and how food connects us with each other. I love that, it's holy, sacred work, I love it. And I've always loved it. And in this new season of life, even with all the pain over the last 2 years, I'm going to hold on to that. That's something from the past that is familiar that I'm going to take with me and go deeper on, That's just me, right? Terry says, everything is strange. I'm waiting to see what will happen to open newness, and I may not I may not even like. I am preparing, right? Right? Yeah. And see, like at the end of the story in John 21, Jesus is talking with Peter and he says, he says that famous phrase, when you were young, you went wherever you wanted, but when you're old, you're going to stretch out your hands and someone's going to put a belt around you and take you a place that you don't want to go. Like there are definitely things about life as we go through life that are unwanted, you know? And part of an Easter mindset, part of what the great days reminds us is that even then, we have deep, powerful resources within ourselves to stay true to ourselves, who we are meant to be, right? Like Jill and I today were taking a walk and we were talking about someone who was like really difficult to interact with and how like Jill was told by someone else that, she should be harder on this person. And Jill's like, I don't want to do that. And it's not because it isn't true that like the person that she's frustrated with isn't frustrating. Like they're very frustrating, right? But it's like being petty and constantly on it, right? It's not about the other person. It's about remaining true to being the person that she is. It's about all of us saying that regardless of circumstance, regardless of even if it's unwanted and everything, we're going to stay in touch with those deeper, truer expressions of who we are because we want to be able to look at ourselves in the mirror and be okay with what we see, right? This is how compassion is this is how, sometimes by what we don't do or what we refrain from doing is sometimes some of the most compassionate things we've done, right? A lot of times we think of compassion and love and care and all these things as things that we do and say, but sometimes it's what we refuse to do and say, right? It shows a deep compassion for self and others, right? Yeah, that's real, Terry. Mark says, my family's changing dynamic is really hard for me. With therapy, I'm trying to process and figure out a practical way for me to move forward. This is the first time in my life I feel like I'm allowing myself to not allow shame or guilt pull me back to old family emotional traps. Being that Mother's Day is on the horizon, I'm trying to not feel pressure to resolve these deep problems and conflicts in a week, praying a lot about it. Yeah, you can't solve a lifetime of conflicts and coping mechanisms in a week, right? Think about how old you are, all right? Whatever age you are, with all the good and the deep and the true and the beautiful about you and your baggage and your issues. I say this all the time. I am 48 years old. I'm going to be 49 in June. I'm a year off of 50. It took me almost 50 years to get where I am today. It ain't going to change in a week. It ain't going to change in a year, right? The actual baggage that I have is like my stuff that is part of what I'm carrying with me that constantly invites me into deeper self-compassion, setting an intention of self-compassion and compassion for others, and to act in my relationships so that I'm constantly growing and deepening and transforming, right? Instead of looking at all that stuff as baggage to be left aside, right? It can become the fuel for a constant unfolding journey. To love a person is to love a process, and it has to start with yourself. You have to start your own process. I love that you recognize that. I'm trying to not feel pressure to resolve deep problems and conflicts in a week because it ain't going to happen anyway, and you aren't failing if it isn't resolved. Go do your best on Mother's Day. Do your best. Offer what you can. And if, and some of us have family members where there's no contact, right? We've asked for no contact. You're not failing. You're doing right by yourself. It's different for everybody, right? But give yourself that grace. That is the intention of self-compassion for sure. Diana says, this resonates with me from my professional life. When I'm treated poorly and pushed to my limit by unkind supervisors, I just repeat over and over in my head, I don't work for you, I work for God, and he sees and appreciates and fuels all your needs to do his work. I just hold tightly to the fact that I'm living in this world, but not of this world. That's really great. That's a great tactic as well. This is what we call coping tactic, reframing. This is really powerful, and it's freeing, right? It's freeing. Give yourself compassion about your own process. Differentiate from others and their process, right? You don't have to accept the assignment of unkindness from your supervisor, right? This is excellent. You guys are a lot healthier than you give yourselves credit for, probably, right? I love this. Now, you've heard me use the phrase, the intention of self-compassion. And that's what I really kind of want to dig into as we end today, I want us to do a guided centering prayer meditation called the intention of self-compassion. And I want us to conclude our time with that, okay? Where we go deeper with the gift of stillness and breath, where we align our bodies and minds, and then we focus it on action toward the self, right? To make our bodies our indispensable partners in our spiritual journey. You don't have a body, right? You are a body, despite what people say. You're a body, soul, mind, spirit. Those are all different words for looking at the same thing from a different perspective. Human beings are much more complex. We're not able to be dissected. Like, you need your body. Your body is you as much as your mind is you. And so meditation guided prayer helps us use our bodies as partners to focus on our breath, and then to focus our attention on the new ways of being and belonging that all of us are discovering and growing into, that some of you have shared today, which I love. Thank you for sharing it. So we're going to do this intention of self-compassion. So I want to invite you to find a place where you're going to be sitting, or if it's comfortable for you, if you have a mat or something, you could lay down for this, whatever is most comfortable for you. And some of that, I think this is a really important guided prayer, because many of us have this tendency toward performance, perfectionism. I have to produce something, right? Like, that's one of my big axioms, is like, the spiritual life is not a product to be produced and achieved. It's a process to be enjoyed and experienced, right? And so even when we're praying, even when we're trying to discover these new ways of being and belonging, we try to get it right, And I see some of you are really okay with not getting it right, which we've talked about. But we have other ways that we might be hard on ourselves, for not having the experience or reaching the outcomes that we think we should be having. That terrible word, should, right? So something to remember when it comes to our spiritual journey is that it's far more important than outcome is our intention, right? Our focus, because that focus is what keeps us moving in the direction as we unfold, as these new ways of being unfold, as we start to recognize others for who they are and what they're becoming, in ourselves the same way, right? So having this focus, this intention to be present with what is right now and what we're experiencing in the moment, is how we unlock the ease that is meant to be ours in our journey, even when things are hard. Because we're going to always get distracted. We're always going to have days when it's much harder than we want it to be, We'll always have days where it's difficult to be kind to ourselves or others. That's why focus, intention is so important in self-compassion, and in how guided centering prayer and meditation helps lay, another layer. It kind of strengthens our minds and our spirits, our souls, our core, to stay on track with this new possibility, stay on track with, and not to give up on, but to cultivate the imagination for transformation, to find new creative ways of becoming, right? So even when self-kindness does not come naturally or easily, that focus helps provide us with a foundation, and we can grow it, and it becomes more and more. Okay. So that's what we're going to do right now. Okay. So if you can, sit upright. If you're sitting, sit upright with a long back, comfortably on a chair, or if you're sitting on the floor, maybe with your legs crossed. Lying down, like I said, is perfectly okay too. If this is what it feels like your body needs, do what you want, do what you need. Listen to what you feel you need, right? And if it feels right, you can close your eyes for this practice. And if it doesn't, you can just always allow your gaze to be soft with kind of a downward focus or toward the middle distance, whatever works best. And now, take a long, slow, deep breath in through your nose. And allow your body to release and exhale through your mouth. One more time in through your nose. And with the exhale, see if you can notice anywhere in your body where you might be contracting, tightening up. Just breathe out through your mouth. And allow those places just to relax and to melt and to feel as comfortable and safe, because you are safe. You are wise. You are strong. You are here. We are with you. Even over the digital divide, we give each other the gift, the sacred gift of our presence to one another. One more deep breath in. Breathe in as if you're breathing into your heart, into your stomach, all the way to your legs. In. And then out. And releasing. To stretch, to help you relax, do that. And now gently place your right hand on your heart. You can feel the pulse of your life in your body, your left hand on your belly. And now imagine what would it feel like right now if I were to hold myself with just a little more compassion. If this language is helpful for you, what would it feel like right now if I were to just let God love me just a little bit more? And notice your body's response. There's no right way of experiencing this. Just explore what it's like to open up a little bit more to compassion. And then explore, what would it feel like in your body right now to receive kindness? How would your body feel if you receive kindness right now? It's a fruit of the Spirit, kindness. And then, what would receiving compassion sound like to you? You might tune into a word or a phrase that feels compassionate and kind to you. What are the words that you would need to hear that would let you know you are receiving compassion? Maybe it's the phrase, I love you. I'm not giving up. Maybe it's the phrase, it's going to be all right. I don't know. What words work for you? Help you tune into the compassion and kindness that you need. If nothing is arising just yet, or if you feel that compassion is feeling difficult to access today, that's okay. This is just us warming up to the idea. So maybe I invite you to, if you need it, to strengthen your focus, your intention for being here. You might repeat the following phrases silently or out of loud. Even if you have others around you, maybe have one of you say it. You can choose, be partners, or both say it together. I don't know. Wherever you are, but in your heart or even out loud. I think it's more powerful to speak it over yourself and say it out loud. You could say, may I be kind to myself. May I be gentle with myself. May I be at ease. May I be compassionate to myself. And then, still with your hands on your heart and belly, I invite you to consider, what would the experience of compassion feel like as a sensation? Would it be an experience of warmth, a softening, a loving hand stroking your cheek, a hug from a loved one or a guide? As you continue to breathe, see if you can allow your body to explore the physical experience of compassion and what it would feel like for you to receive that care. If you like, you can try these with yourself. You can wrap your arms around your body and give yourself a hug. The self-hug meditation is one that I think we've done before. It's a good practice. Or maybe you might imagine kindness flowing in with every breath you take. Whatever it is, just take a few moments. I invite you to notice if there's been a kind of opening within you to compassion today, however small or large that opening may be. And if it doesn't feel like you've made much progress toward feeling a sense of self compassion, that's okay. Like I said, it's a process. To love a person is to love a process. To set a focus and intention of compassion can be a very challenging exercise for some of us, especially those of us who have experienced trauma early in life. If you grew up with adverse childhood experiences, not only can affect your health and your relationships, but your sense of self, right? But this kind of practice helps us slowly, inch by inch, let that trauma go and work around the restrictions that trauma manifests in us, a restriction of personality or emotion. Slowly but surely, we can work around it. Because in any case, just by being here with us, you have set the intention and focus in your heart and mind toward compassion. And the more you come back to it, the more you will notice changes rising in your ability to access it when you need it. I really believe this for you. May you grow deeper in compassion and focus as you discover new ways of being and belonging. And so for now, let's just take a few clearing breaths. And again. One more time. Thank you for joining us in this very short, intentional, insanely practical spiritual tool. And if you have your eyes closed, I'd invite you to slowly open them when you feel ready and come back to this practice anytime you wish to explore, to feel what it looks like and feels like to open even just a little bit more again and again and again and again. Some of you are saying it's new. It's a new week. It's a new you every day. You can be a new you. Yes. All right. Spiritual direction and soul care. Thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing your wisdom in the comments and your heart and your openness. What a great time together. I hope it was a gift as we continue through these great days of the Easter season. Can't wait to keep talking with you more. It's so good to be together. Maybe as you reflect on our time together today, maybe go over to the Facebook page and put some comments there, share your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going always. Like I say, this community is full of wisdom. So let's share that with each other and encourage each other. If there's any way that I can connect with you and support you this week, let me know. I'm always happy to do a soul care session. We can connect. It'll be awesome together. I love it. I've loved this being together as we journey. And let your friends know too. We're a growing community, so invite them to join us on Facebook. Invite your Facebook friends that you know would be benefited from joining us, and invite them to come bring their wisdom and their journey with us too, as we love each other through the process of being what we are. To love a person is to love a process, and even the journey of renewal is a process, and we're just doing it together. It's so great. All right, be well and be healthy, and let's have a great, great week. You guys are amazing. Let me know how you're doing, and we'll see you next week.